You know the name, Reinhard Heydrich, the butcher of Prague, the man with the iron heart. Hitler called him irreplaceable. But what if we told you that on May 27th, 1942, at exactly 10:30 in the morning, two Czech agents with jammed weapons and improvised explosives managed to kill the architect of the final solution? What if we told you that his final 24 hours revealed the cold machinery of Nazi terror finally grinding to a halt? What if we told you that, in those last hours, the third most powerful man in the Reich died not from bullets, but from horsehair and sepsis, writhing in agony while his empire prepared to incinerate villages in his name? 27-year-old Joseph Gabčík steps into the street. His Sten gun jams. 28-year-old Jan Kubis hurls a modified anti-tank grenade. It misses the car, but explodes against the rear wheel. Shrapnel and horsehair from the upholstery tear into Heydrich's spleen and lung. The man who organized the Wannsee conference is now bleeding on a Prague street corner, screaming for his driver to chase down his attackers. The date? May 27th, 1942. The place? Kirchmayerova Street, Prague, near Bulovka Hospital. The beginning of the end for the SS Obergruppenführer, who had turned mass murder into an administrative process. If you value documented resistance history like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also comment from which city you're hearing this from. This script is researched and factual, using sources from Professor Herwig Hamperl's autopsy report, published in 2004 by the Charles University Prague Pathology Department, and Dr. Boyer Ray de Falk's medical analysis, published in the Israel Medical Association Journal in 2014. These are the deep archives that reveal the true medical and political circumstances of Heydrich's death. Now, back to the information. 2 months earlier, January 20th, 1942, Villa Wannsee, Berlin. Heydrich chairs the conference that will systematize the murder of 11 million Jews across Europe. 15 Nazi officials sit around a mahogany table. The minutes record Heydrich's words: the final solution to the Jewish question in Europe, deportation, extermination, industrial killing. The language is bureaucratic. The intent is genocide. By spring, the first transports are already rolling towards Sobibor and Treblinka. September 27th, 1941, Prague Castle. Hitler appoints Heydrich acting Reich protector of Bohemia and Moravia. Within 72 hours, 92 Czechs are executed. By February 1942, Heydrich estimates between 4,000 and 5,000 arrests and between 400 and 500 executions. The resistance is paralyzed. Czech Prime Minister Alois Elias sits in a Berlin prison, sentenced to death but kept alive as a hostage. The butcher's methods are working. London, October 28th, 1941. Czechoslovak Independence Day. Brigadier Colin Gubbins, Director of Operations for the British Special Operations Executive, approves Operation Anthropoid. The code name comes from Greek, having the form of a human, fitting for an operation designed to prove that even Nazi monsters can bleed. 2,000 exiled Czech soldiers in Britain. 24 selected for special training school. 2 chosen for assassination: Warrant Officer Joseph Gabčík from Slovakia and Staff Sergeant John Kubis from Moravia. Arrogance, Scotland. November 1941. 6 weeks of commando training in the Scottish Highlands. Close quarters combat. Weapons handling. Explosive devices. The instructors are impressed. Gabčík shows exceptional marksmanship. Kubis demonstrates steady nerves under pressure. They learn to kill a man in a moving vehicle using a Sten submachine gun and modified anti-tank grenades. Karl Svoboda was supposed to accompany Gabčík, but a training accident with a hot air balloon parachute jump changes everything. Kubis takes his place. December 28th, 1941. RAF Tangmere, England, 10 p.m. Halifax bomber from No. 138 Squadron RAF takes off through winter darkness. On board, Gabčík and Kubis, plus 7 other Czech agents in groups Silver A and Silver B. Mission: multiple sabotage operations across occupied Czechoslovakia. Only 2 men know their target is Reinhard Heydrich. The plane was supposed to drop them near Pilsen. Navigation errors and German anti-aircraft fire force an emergency drop near Nevisdy, east of Prague. Panenské Brzany, May 27th, 1942. Heydrich's country villa, 10:15 a.m. The acting Reich protector climbs into his open-topped Mercedes 320 Cabriolet Bay. Green paint gleaming in spring sunlight. SS Oberscharführer Johannes Klein at the wheel. No bodyguards, no armor plating, no escort vehicles. Heydrich's arrogance has become legend. He drives the same route every day at the same time. 14 kilometers to Prague Castle for a meeting with Berlin about his expected transfer to France, where the resistance is growing stronger. Prague, Holsovice district. Same morning. Joseph Walczyk positions himself 100 meters north with a pocket mirror. The signal system is simple. A flash of light means Heydrich's Mercedes is approaching. Gabčík and Kubis wait at the tram stop near the junction of Krčmajerova Street and V. Holosovikash. The tight hairpin curve will force any vehicle to slow down. Perfect killing ground. They've surveilled this spot for weeks, hidden in ditches, timing the curves, measuring distances. 10:32 a.m. The Mercedes rounds the bend. Gabčík drops his raincoat, raises the Sten gun. The weapon jams. Mechanism failure. Heydrich sees the Slovak agent and orders Klein to stop. The acting Reich protector stands up in the open car, drawing his Luger pistol, a moment of Nazi arrogance that will cost him his life. Kubis throws the modified anti-tank grenade concealed in his briefcase. The explosion rips through the rear fender. Metal fragments and horsehair from the car's upholstery tear into Heydrich's left side, puncturing spleen, lung, and diaphragm. The butcher is down, screaming. Klein chases Gabčík on foot, gun drawn. Exchange of fire in the street. Gabčík shoots Klein in the leg below the knee. Both Czechs escape in different directions. Kubis injured by his own grenade shrapnel. Gabčík disappearing into Prague's morning crowd. A Czech woman flags down a delivery van. Heydrich is loaded onto his stomach in the truck bed, conscious but in severe pain. Destination, Bulovka Hospital, 400 meters away. Bulovka Hospital emergency room, 10:45 a.m., doctor. Slanina packs the chest wound while SS security police surround the building. Chief surgeon, Dr. Walter Dick, a Sudeten-German Dekt, prepares for emergency surgery. Professor Holbaum from Charles University assists. They reinflate the collapsed left lung. Remove the tip of the fractured 11th rib, suture the torn diaphragm, insert drainage catheters, and perform a complete splenectomy. The spleen contains grenade fragments and horsehair upholstery. The operation appears successful. Berlin, same day. Heinrich Himmler receives word of the attack. The Reichsfuhrer SS immediately dispatches his personal physician, SS Brigadeführer Karl Gebhardt, to Prague. Gebhardt flies from Berlin that evening with Professor Ferdinand Sauerbruch, a consultant surgeon and old family friend of Heydrich. The medical team represents the pinnacle of German surgical expertise. They arrive to find their patient stable, alert, and seemingly recovering well. May 28th, Bulovka Hospital, room 14. Heydrich sits up in bed, joking with nurses, eating solid food. His wife Lena visits, bringing home cooked meals. The wound is draining freely. No signs of serious infection. Gebhardt reports to Himmler, temperature normal, patient responding well to treatment. Hitler's personal physician, Dr. Theodor Morell, suggests administering the new antibacterial drug sulfonamide as a precaution. Gebhardt declines. The patient appears to be recovering without complications. Prague, meanwhile. The largest manhunt in Nazi history begins. 10,000 SS troops and police flood the protectorate. Roadblocks on every street. House-to-house searches. Mass arrests. Hitler initially demands the execution of 10,000 politically unreliable Czechs, but backs down when Himmler warns that such measures would damage war production in this crucial industrial zone. Still, the terror is methodical. By day's end, over 100 people are in custody. May 30th, Himmler arrives in Prague for a personal visit with Heydrich. The Reichsfuhrer SS finds his protege alert and optimistic. They discuss the manhunt, plans for increased security measures, and Heydrich's expected promotion to Paris. During their conversation, Heydrich quotes words from one of his father's operas. Yes, the world is just a barrel organ which the Lord God turns himself. Everyone must dance to the tune that stands on the cylinder. The irony is lost on both men. June 1st. The search intensifies. SS and police units comb Prague district by district. Resistance safe houses are blown. 3 Czech families, the Moraveks, the Ogans, and the Svados, are providing shelter for the assassins. But their networks remain intact. Gabčík and Kubis hide in different locations, treating their wounds, waiting for extraction orders that will never come. The resistance leadership begs London to call off future operations. The price is too high. June 2nd, evening. Heydrich's condition changes suddenly. The patient experiences a sharp spike in temperature. His appetite disappears. The chest drain shows increased purulent discharge. Dr. Gebhardt notices the first signs of systemic infection, but remains optimistic. Medieval surgical wisdom held that pus bonum et laudabile, good and praiseworthy pus, indicated proper healing. Modern medicine was only beginning to understand the deadly nature of sepsis. June 3rd, midday. The collapse is swift and brutal. Heydrich sits up eating lunch when he suddenly convulses and falls unconscious. His blood pressure drops precipitously. Pulse becomes rapid and thready, the classic signs of septic shock. Lina Heydrich is summoned urgently from their villa in Panenske Brzany. She finds her husband delirious. Sweating, struggling to breathe, the infection has reached his bloodstream. The medical team works desperately through the afternoon. Intravenous fluids, cardiac stimulants, oxygen therapy. But the infection is systemic now, overwhelming his organs one by one. The horsehair and fabric fragments that entered his wounds during the explosion have created perfect conditions for bacterial growth. Streptococcus and staphylococcus multiply unchecked through his bloodstream. 4 a.m., June 4th, 1942. 38 hours and 34 minutes after the attack on Kirchmayerova Street, Heydrich briefly regains consciousness. His wife leans over the hospital bed. His last recorded words, "Ah, you are here. How nice. Come again this afternoon, won't you?" Lina cannot bear the strain. Nurses administer a sedative. Before she wakes, her husband is dead. 4:30 a.m., the Reich Security Main Office Chief, architect of the final solution, and acting Reich Protector of Bohemia and Moravia dies of systemic sepsis caused by horsehair and upholstery fragments embedded in his spleen during a botched assassination attempt. Death certificate number 348, volume 1, 1942. Cause of death: damage to inner organs following poisoning through highly virulent infection. The autopsy begins 4 hours later in the hospital director's office, unusual protocol suggesting political sensitivity. Professor Herwig Hamperl of Charles University performs the examination with forensic pathologist Gunther Wehrich. The findings are revealing: extensive purulent infection in chest and abdominal cavities, fat embolism in the pulmonary artery, severe edema in the upper lung lobes. No evidence of poison. The official cause remains sepsis, though the incomplete nature of the autopsy, no examination of head or neck organs, raises questions that will persist for decades. June 7th, Hitler attends Heydrich's funeral in the Reich Chancellery in Berlin. The Fuhrer places the highest decorations, German Order, Blood Order Medal, Wound Badge in gold, War Merit Cross First Class with swords, on the funeral pillow. Himmler delivers the eulogy, praising Heydrich as one of the best National Socialists, one of the staunchest defenders of the German Reich. But privately, Hitler rages at Heydrich's carelessness. Such heroic gestures as driving in an open vehicle or walking about unguarded are just damn stupidity. The revenge is systematic and brutal. June 9th, the day of Heydrich's Berlin funeral. SS units surround the mining village of Lidice, falsely linked to the assassins through fabricated Gestapo intelligence. 199 men and boys over 14 are shot in groups of 10. 195 women are deported to Ravensbrück concentration camp. 95 children are taken prisoner. 81 will die in gas vans at Chelmno extermination camp. 8 are adopted by German families. The village is burned, bulldozed, and erased from maps. June 18th. Karl Kurda, a member of the Silver A parachute group, walks into Gestapo headquarters and betrays his comrades for 1 million Reichsmarks. He provides names, addresses, safe houses. The final act begins. At 5 a.m. on June 17th, the Moravec flat is raided. Marie Moravec bites a cyanide capsule in the toilet rather than face torture. Her 17-year-old son, Atta, is shown his mother's severed head in a fish tank and breaks under interrogation. June 18th. Dawn. 700 SS troops surround the Orthodox Cathedral of Saints Cyril and Methodius on Reslova Street. Inside the crypt, Joseph Gabčík, Jan Kubis, and 5 other Czech parachutists. The siege lasts 6 hours. Tear gas, flooding attempts, explosive charges. The Czechs fight with pistols and grenades until their ammunition runs out. Rather than surrender, they take their own lives with their final bullets. The only successful assassination of a top-ranking Nazi official ends with the death of every man involved. But the medical mystery persists. How did horsehair kill the Butcher of Prague? The answer lies in 19th century surgical knowledge meeting 20th century barbarity. The upholstery in Heydrich's Mercedes contained animal hair treated with various chemicals and bacteria from the tanning process. When the Kurda grenade explosion drove these fibers deep into his organs, they created perfect conditions for infection. His surgeons, despite their skill, lacked modern antibiotics. Penicillin was available, but not to German medicine. The wonder drug that might have saved him was restricted to Allied forces. Dr. Gebhardt's refusal to administer sulfonamides, Germany's most advanced antibacterial treatment, remains controversial. Some historians suggest political motives. Gebhardt was loyal to Himmler, who saw Heydrich as a rival for post-war power. By letting the patient die of natural complications, the Reichsfuhrer SS eliminated a dangerous competitor while maintaining plausible deniability. The theory cannot be proven, but Gebhardt's later actions, allegedly attempting to poison Albert Speer on Himmler's orders, lend credence to the suspicion. The ripple effects spread across Europe. Operation Anthropoid proves that Nazi leaders are not invincible. Resistance movements from Norway to Yugoslavia take note. The destruction of Lidice generates worldwide sympathy for Czechoslovakia and leads Britain and France to formally repudiate the Munich Agreement. The country will be restored after the war. Czech pilots in the RAF fight with renewed determination, knowing their homeland has paid the ultimate price for freedom. In the Nazi hierarchy, Heydrich's death creates a dangerous vacuum. Himmler personally takes control of the Reich Security Main Office for months, consolidating power before appointing the brutal but less capable Ernst Kaltenbrunner as replacement. The final solution continues, but without Heydrich's organizational genius, the killing machine becomes less efficient, more chaotic. Some historians estimate that his death may have saved thousands of lives through reduced bureaucratic efficiency. The medical evidence tells its own story. Professor Hamperl's autopsy report, kept secret for 60 years and only published in 2004, Psio, reveals the true cause of death: systemic sepsis caused by foreign material in the wound. No poison, no exotic weapons, no secret British biological warfare program, just horsehair, bacteria, and the limits of 1940s medicine. The man who turned genocide into an administrative process died from a medieval killer, infected wounds. But questions remain. Why was the autopsy performed in the hospital director's office instead of a proper autopsy room? Why were only partial examinations conducted? Why were organ weights not recorded? The circumstances suggest political interference, though the exact nature remains classified in German archives. What is certain is that by 4:30 a.m. on June 4th, 1942, the third most powerful man in Nazi Germany was dead from complications any modern emergency room could have treated. The final irony? Heydrich's arrogance killed him twice. First, his refusal to use bodyguards or armored vehicles made the assassination possible. Second, his dismissal of security protocols after the attack, moving around Prague in an open car, maintaining regular schedules, allowed the Czechs to plan their strike. A man who built his career on meticulous planning and ruthless efficiency died because he believed himself untouchable. The clock reads 4:30 a.m., June 4th, 1942. Room 14, Bulovka Hospital, Prague. The man called Himmler's brain breathes his last. In his final delirium, he speaks not of the thousand-year Reich or the final solution, but of his father's operas, childhood memories of music before the machinery of murder. The last sound he hears is not the Horst Wessel song, but the morning birds of Prague, singing the same songs they sang before the occupation, the same songs they will sing after liberation. If you value documented wartime medical history like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also comment from which city you're hearing this from. This script researches deep archival sources including declassified SOE training records from the British National Archives and Dr. Karl Gebhardt's trial testimony from the Nuremberg medical trials, documents that reveal the intersection of politics, medicine, and resistance during World War II. Now back to the information. Outside room 14, Prague begins to wake. Workers head to factories. Children walk to school under Nazi banners. The city looks the same as it did 24 hours ago, but everything has changed. The man who terrorized Czechoslovakia is dead. The resistance has struck the impossible blow, and in villages across the Protectorate, families gather around hidden radios to hear the news spreading by whisper and gesture. The Butcher of Prague is finished. The Moravec family safe house, Prague, 2 a.m., June 4th. Marie Moravec cannot sleep. Her 17-year-old son, Atta, tosses restlessly in the next room. They do not know that in 14 hours, SS troops will surround their building. They do not know that Marie will die from cyanide and Atta will be tortured until he breaks. They do not know that 400 meters away, in Bulovka Hospital, the man they helped to kill is taking his final breaths. The machinery of reprisal was already in motion before Heydrich's death. Standartenführer Horst Böhme, commander of the security police in Prague, had compiled lists of suspects within hours of the attack. Mass arrests began at dawn on May 28th. The net was closing systematically. Known resistance members, their families, anyone with connections to the London government in exile. By the time Heydrich died, over 3,000 people were in custody. But the true horror was yet to come. 6 a.m., June 4th. Word of Heydrich's death reaches Hitler's East Prussian headquarters. The Führer explodes in rage, then calculates, the assassination cannot go unanswered, but the response must serve larger political goals. Kill too few, and Nazi prestige suffers. Kill too many, and Czech war production collapses. The solution is surgical terror. destroy specific communities completely, leaving others untouched as examples of the price of resistance. Lidice, population 503. A farming and mining village 22 kilometers northwest of Prague. Why this particular settlement? The answer lies in a love letter. Václav Žiža, seeking to end an extramarital affair, wrote to his lover Anna Maruščáková, claiming he had done what he wanted to do regarding Heydrich. When factory owner Jaroslav Pala opened the misdirected letter on June 3rd, he contacted police. Though Žiža had no connection to the assassination, his lover mentioned sending greetings to the family of Josef Horák, a Lidice resident serving with the RAF in Britain. Fabricated evidence. Manufactured connections. Perfect justification for annihilation. June 9th, 5 a.m. SS troops and order police surround Lidice. The operation is methodical. All telephone lines cut. All roads blocked. Every resident accounted for. The men and boys are separated from women and children in the village square. Ages 14 and above will be shot. The women will be deported. The children will disappear. The killing begins at 6 a.m. 10 men at a time, led to mattresses placed against the wall of Horák's farm. Machine guns from the security police battalion. 199 deaths by 10 a.m. The bodies are covered with straw and gasoline, then burned. The ashes are scattered in nearby fields. By evening, Lidice has ceased to exist. Buildings demolished. Wells filled with debris. Even the cemetery is destroyed. The graves obliterated. But the children, 95 children, ages 1 to 16, loaded into trucks and driven to a detention center in Gneisenau. Nazi racial experts examine each child for German characteristics. 8 pass the test and are sent to German families for re-education. The remaining 87 are transported to Chomno extermination camp and murdered in gas vans within days. Their names are recorded in German efficiency records. The Hanusova twins, age 6, Václav Zelenka, age 8, Marie Dolezhalova, age 4, all erased for the crime of living in the wrong village. The world watches in horror. British newspapers carry photographs of the burning ruins. Radio Free Europe broadcasts the names of the dead. In London, the Czechoslovak government in exile finally understands the price of Operation Anthropoid. President Beneš privately questions whether the assassination was worth such slaughter, but publicly maintains that resistance was essential for national dignity. June 24th. The village of Ležáky suffers the same fate. All 33 adult residents shot. 2 children survive because they possess German racial characteristics. The village is erased from maps. The pattern is clear. Not random violence, but calculated demonstration. These places died not because they harbored assassins, but because their destruction serves Nazi pedagogical goals. In Prague's morgues, the bodies pile higher. Fathers shot for their sons, suspected activities. Mothers deported for their husbands, politics. Children orphaned for their grandparents, loyalties. By year's end, Nazi records will count 1,340 executions, directly linked to Heydrich's death. The true number, including those who die in camps or from beating and torture, approaches 3,000. But resistance spreads like infection through occupied Europe. News of the successful assassination reaches partisan groups from Yugoslavia to France. If Heydrich can be killed, any Nazi can be killed. The mythology of Germanic invincibility cracks. Resistance leaders who had counseled patience now advocate action. The butcher's death becomes a rallying cry across the continent. August 20th, 1942. Mauthausen concentration camp, Austria. The last of the Anthropoid conspirators die. Ata Moravec, tortured into betraying his comrades, is executed alongside his father. The teenager who held out for hours under SS interrogation dies with the names of the dead on his lips. Gabčík, Kubiš, Opalka, Valčík, heroes all. The medical mystery deepens with each passing month. How could the architect of systematic murder die from such mundane causes? Dr. Gebhardt's treatment records, examined decades later, reveal troubling inconsistencies. Standard protocols ignored, recommended medications refused. A patient who should have lived, allowed to die. Some historians suggest Himmler used the assassination to eliminate a dangerous rival. Others argue that Gebhardt simply failed under pressure. The truth remains buried in classified files. But new evidence emerges from unexpected sources. In 1970, Gotcha under Professor Hamperl, the pathologist who performed Heydrich's autopsy, grants a rare interview. He insists that death resulted from gyroanemic shock, not the officially reported sepsis, fat embolism in the lungs, not infection. The distinction matters. Embolism suggests surgical complications, not the slow bacterial death described in contemporary accounts. The implications are staggering. If Heydrich died from fat embolism, fat particles entering the bloodstream during surgery, then his death was potentially preventable with better surgical technique. If he died from sepsis caused by contaminated horsehair, then the assassination succeeded through pure chance. If he died from deliberate medical negligence, then Himmler orchestrated the murder of his own protege. 3 theories, no definitive proof. March 1943. Berlin, the Reich Security Main Office under new leadership, Ernst Kaltenbrunner, Heydrich's successor, lacks his predecessor's organizational genius. Reports pile unread. Deportation schedules fall behind. The killing machine still functions, but with less deadly efficiency. Some historians estimate that Heydrich's death disrupted Holocaust operations enough to save tens of thousands of lives. Not intentionally, not through heroic action, simply through bureaucratic chaos. The final accounting begins. Operation Anthropoid. 2 Czech soldiers trained in Britain kill the 3rd most powerful Nazi, but trigger reprisals that cost 3,000 civilian lives. Was it worth it? The question haunts survivors. Libusha Fricheva, who lost her entire family in the purges, argues that resistance was essential for national honor. František Seidel, the only adult male from Lidice to survive the war, maintains that no political goal justifies such slaughter. Both are correct. Both are wrong. The mathematics of resistance cannot be calculated in lives saved versus lives lost. The true victory lies in the symbolic realm, proof that Nazi leaders were mortal, that occupation was not permanent, that small nations could strike back against continental empires. The resistance succeeded not in killing Heydrich, but in demonstrating that the 1,000-year Reich was built on human foundations, vulnerable to human weapons. December 1942, 6 months after the assassination, Prague's Orthodox Cathedral of Saints. Cyril and Methodius remains closed, the crypt sealed. Local residents leave flowers at the door despite German prohibitions. Children draw chalk marks on walls, small acts of remembrance for the men who died fighting. The resistance is broken but not eliminated. New networks form around the memory of Anthropoid. And in a curious historical footnote, the story comes full circle. Dr. Karl Gebhardt, Heydrich's attending physician, faces trial at Nuremberg for medical war crimes. His experiments on Polish women at Ravensbrück, his deliberate withholding of treatment from injured prisoners, his role in Nazi euthanasia programs. When prosecutors ask about Heydrich's death, Gebhardt maintains that everything possible was done. The judges remain unconvinced. He is hanged at Landsberg prison in June 1948, exactly 6 years after his famous patient's death. The horsehair theory, meanwhile, enters historical legend. Popular accounts describe exotic poisons and secret weapons. British intelligence supposedly laced the grenades with biological agents. The truth is more prosaic, but equally deadly. Industrial-age automotive upholstery meeting medieval infection patterns. No conspiracy required. Just bacteria, fabric, and the limits of wartime medicine. Prague. June 4th, 1992. 50 years after the assassination, Václav Havel, playwright and president of newly free Czechoslovakia, speaks at a commemoration ceremony. The names are read: Josef Gabčík, Jan Kubiš, Adolf Opálka, Josef Bublik, Jaroslav Schwarz, Jan Hruby. Josef Valčík, 7 young men who chose death over submission. Their sacrifice, Havel argues, proves that even the darkest tyranny contains the seeds of its own destruction. The Bulovka Hospital still stands. Room 14 is now part of a modern cardiac unit. But a small plaque marks the location where Heydrich died. Tourists rarely visit. The history is too complex, too morally ambiguous. Heroes and victims and perpetrators, intermingled in ways that resist simple narrative. The Czech guides prefer to discuss the resistance rather than the reprisals, the courage rather than the cost. But the medical files remain. Professor Hamprel's autopsy notes, declassified in 2004, provide the definitive account. Cause of death: systemic infection following introduction of foreign material into wounds. No poison, no conspiracy, no exotic biological weapons. Just horsehair, bacteria, and the inexorable logic of sepsis. The man who bureaucratized genocide died from the same infections that killed medieval peasants. Final revelation. In 1996, Czech investigators excavate mass graves at Doblice Cemetery, searching for the remains of the Anthropoid team. They find evidence of hurried burials. Quicklime disposal attempts to erase the historical record. The bodies are too damaged for individual identification, but forensic analysis confirms the presence of 7 adult males, ages consistent with the known victims. They are reburied with full military honors in a ceremony attended by British Special Operations, executive veterans, and Czech resistance survivors. Among the attendees, Gillian Halcrow, daughter of Lieutenant Colonel Ernst van Maurik, who trained Kubiš and Gabčík in Scotland. She carries letters written by the Czech soldiers during their final weeks in Britain, letters that reveal young men aware they were embarking on a suicide mission but determined to strike back against occupation. "We know we may not return," Kubish wrote to his sister. "But some things are worth dying for." The circle closes with a museum. The cathedral crypt where the final battle was fought becomes a memorial site. Visitors descend stone steps to see the exact locations where each man died, the bullet holes still visible in the walls, the flood marks from German attempts to drown out the defenders. Silent testimony to a few hours when 7 Czechs held off 700 SS troops and died rather than surrender. Above ground, Prague bustles with tourists and commerce. Mercedes vehicles fill the streets, an irony the guides sometimes mention. The city that once cowered under Nazi banners now hosts visitors from around the world, drawn by its freedom and culture. The occupation that seemed permanent lasted less than 7 years. The resistance that seemed hopeless sparked a continental uprising. The man who believed himself invincible died from horsehair and bacteria, proving that even the most sophisticated tyranny remains vulnerable to the oldest human enemies, courage and infection. 4:30 a.m., June 4th, 1942. The final breath. In his delirium, does Heydrich see the faces of his victims, the children loaded into cattle cars, the families torn apart by his orders, the villages erased from maps? History does not record his final thoughts. Only his final words. A request to see his wife that afternoon, spoken to a woman already sedated against the horror of watching her husband die. The doctors pull sheets over the corpse of the man called Himmler's brain. Outside, Prague awakens to news that will spread across occupied Europe. The butcher is dead. In London, the BBC announces that the acting Reich protector has succumbed to his wounds. In Berlin, Hitler rages that the man with the iron heart proved to have organs of flesh like any other mortal. And in villages and cities across the continent, resistance fighters hear the message that 2 young Czechs died to deliver. Even Nazi gods can bleed. The medical examiner closes his report. Death certificate number 348. Reinhard Tristan Eugen Heydrich. Age 38. Cause of death: sepsis following traumatic injury. The bureaucratic language conceals the magnitude of the moment. The architect of the final solution, killed by horsehair and bacteria. The man who turned genocide into an administrative process. Undone by medieval medicine, the Nazi who believed in racial superiority, destroyed by microscopic organisms that recognized no master race. But history's final judgment waits in an unmarked grave outside Prague. In 2009, forensic investigators return to jobless cemetery with ground-penetrating radar and DNA sampling equipment. They find disturbed earth, quicklime residue, fragments of bone and metal, the remains of Operation Anthropoid, scattered and mixed beyond individual identification. 7 names on a memorial stone represent dozens of bone fragments that science cannot separate. The technology exists to extract DNA, to give names to the anonymous dead, but Czech authorities decide against it. Some mysteries should remain unsolved. Some heroes should rest in collective anonymity. The men who killed Heydrich died as they lived in their final months. Together, nameless, united in purpose beyond individual identity. The last revelation comes from British archives, declassified in 2012. SOE training records reveal that Gabčík and Kubiš were told the mission was suicide. No extraction plan existed. No escape route was prepared. They were sent to die, and they knew it. Their letters home, censored at the time but preserved in intelligence files, show young men who understood they were trading their lives for a symbolic victory. "We go gladly to our deaths," Gabčík wrote to his mother in Slovak, because some acts are worth more than life itself. The censor blacked out the line in 1941. 70 years later, the words emerged to define the final hours of Reinhard Heydrich, killed not by British weapons or Czech courage alone, but by the simple human conviction that tyranny must be resisted, regardless of cost. 4:31 a.m. The heart stops. The architect of industrial murder dies in a Prague hospital room, victim of the same bacterial infections that killed countless prisoners in the camps he designed. Poetic justice or historical accident? The distinction no longer matters. The butcher of Prague is finished. The resistance has won its impossible victory. And somewhere in the morning darkness, 2 Czech voices whisper the final truth. The 1,000-year Reich lasted exactly 12 years and 4 months, undone by horsehair, sepsis, and the stubborn human refusal to accept the unacceptable.